closed southbound because of an accident at Hopton Road. In Chelsea, Sloane Avenue is closed both ways because of an accident between Fulham Road and Kings Road. In Hertfordshire, on the M1 southbound, there's a lane closed at Junction 6 for Bricket Wood for recovery after an accident that happened yesterday morning. And on the rails, there's no South Western Railway service at Wimbledon tonight. That's because of engineering works. LBC Travel, I'm Dave Goff.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation. The Nigel Farage Show.
Good morning, everybody. I hope you're all feeling fit and well and not suffering from ashes fever, as I am, which means I've been up nearly all night watching England, just about to lose the first match, and wondering why I did it. Interesting week. I mean, a government that's been going through a very, very tough time, a budget that was looming, and the history over the course of the last few years of repeatedly a budget unfolding within days into chaos, whether it was the pasty tax or whether it was Hammond's perceived attack on the self-employed last year, all of which resulted in U-turns. So the great speculation this week was just how much of a mess would Philip Hammond make of it? And actually what we saw was Spreadsheet Phil turn into the cheeky chappie, chucking out the one-liners, and so far it would appear that the budget hasn't unravelled. And you might say there's a little bit more confidence in the step of the Conservative government. At least there was. But of course, this is politics we're talking about. So an argument is never very far away. And this, I think, really could be a big one. You know, it is the first duty of government to defend the integrity of the nation. And that means defence. That means armed forces, enough of them, trained, equipped, to be able to defend not just us on our home territory, but our interests across the rest of the world. And we could be on the verge of a very big Tory revolt. The plans are to cut troop numbers yet further. Now, I say this against the backdrop that ever since the Conservatives came to power in 2010, albeit it was a coalition then, we have seen reductions in the Army, in the Navy and in the Air Force, and there is now a plan that says by 2025 we could have fewer than 70,000 soldiers in the British Army. And Tobias Ellwood, who's the minister responsible for defence personnel and veterans, is understood to have such concerns about these proposals, he is seriously considering his position. Perhaps in a way not surprising, given that he is actually Lieutenant Colonel Ellwood, and he's still, age 51, signed up with our reserve forces and has fought and served in many campaigns. And Johnny Mercer, who's a Tory member of the Defence Select Committee, relatively new MP, Tory Mercer has said what is proposed is going too far, and I'm determined to do everything I can as a lowly backbencher, but certainly with a powerful cohort behind me, to make sure we remain the party of defence. We'll talk about that. So he's talking about rebelling. Nicholas Soames, of course, grandson of Sir Winston Churchill, and he has said the parliamentary party has a duty now to unite against further cuts to our defence capability. Defence has been very much out of fashion in political terms over the last few years. When we fight general elections, defence almost doesn't really get a look in. It might have done had Jeremy Corbyn's own preferred option of getting rid of Trident been Labour policy, but of course it wasn't. And I think there's a general feeling amongst the Westminster political elite that the public don't really care much about defence. Well, do you know what? I think they're wrong. I think we care greatly about defence, about our armed forces, about us being capable to do the job. But helping me look at this and make sure I'm not giving you a prejudiced negative view of the Conservatives in office when it comes to defence, because I'm pretty cynical about what they say at elections and then what they do. Helping me through this is Peter Caddick-Adams, defence analyst and military historian at Cranfield University. Peter, good morning.
Nigel, good morning.
Good morning. So I'm basically telling the listeners, Peter, that whenever the Tories are in power, we get thumping great big defence cuts. Would that be a reasonable thing for me to say?
Yeah, historically that's exactly right, and we can go back as many decades as you want, so it's not just in the last 10 or 20 years. And conversely, generally speaking, under Labour governments, there is an increase. It's often brought about by world affairs, but it's counter to the narrative you'd expect that the Tories
Yes.
tend to boost armed forces and Labour cuts. History has given us the opposite.
Yeah, no, well, I'm pleased you back me up on that, because I've noticed this many, many times. So what are these current plans to cut back our forces? What's your assessment of them?
Well, they're not plans, they're a range of options. Clearly, defence is under a huge squeeze, and as you say, defence hasn't been very fashionable. So it's been in a backwater and really hasn't been able to argue its case alongside the other government ministries. You could alternatively take a different view, and some academics subscribe to this, which is that since David Cameron came to power originally in the coalition, there is an inclination amongst politicians to let defence wind down slowly, very slowly, in order not to allow future generations to undertake something like Iraq in 2003. I'm not saying that's necessarily the case, but that is one interpretation.
What, to render us incapable of doing such things?
Absolutely, yeah.
But if we can't launch offensive operations, presumably we'd struggle to mount a good defensive operation.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. I'm just saying that's one interpretation that you could draw from the facts. It's not proven, but it's not disproven. But it leaves us in a great state of sort of worry, because that is certainly a conclusion you could draw. And if you're sitting in Moscow or Beijing or in Ankara or somewhere like that, you might look at British capability and British willingness to project power and say, aha, now is our moment.
Which is pretty much what the Argentinians did in 1982, wasn't it? We sent a signal with the withdrawal of HMS Endurance that we weren't taking the South Atlantic seriously, and look what happened. Peter, I wonder what Washington make of all of this, because I understand, President Trump, he's putting more money into US defence. We are leaving a European Union that is about to build its own military, and they've been very clear this week about that. So in a sense, our relationship with America and NATO is perhaps for the next few years more important than it's ever been. Are the Americans going to take us seriously if we cut our army below 70,000 men?
They always take us seriously. And I can remember out in the Gulf in 2003, watching on and listening to sort of senior officers and diplomats poo-poo the idea that we were America's poodle, and acknowledge the fact that sometimes we were America's sheepdog. They and other powers too listen to our opinion, respect it. They don't necessarily go along with it, but it still means that we have a seat on the top table. I think we're more worried about our status than other nations are, but we still need power and we still need the political will to back that up. And I think that's been lost in the big equation. I mean, you can look at defence cuts in two ways: how we regard that in the nation, but how other nations looking out into us regard that, and they're two completely different pictures.
Yeah, because we're not just talking here about manpower cuts. We're also talking about not renewing battle tanks, armoured personnel carriers, things like that. We're talking about kit, perhaps not being state of the art as well. Peter, I'm just going to ask you this: politically, is this the moment at which the Tory backbenchers say enough is enough, in your view?
I'm surprised it's been hasn't exploded before now, because this has been brewing for a long while, and I'm glad it's come to a head. And it's very difficult to draw the line and say, below this we can't do anything, because you have to have the debate about what are the UK Defence Forces for, where are our interests, and what do you want them to do? And that's still being discussed. But just in terms of morale, within the UK forces, the number of pieces of kit that are being postponed, all sorts of delays in repairs, recruits not coming through the door, and crucially, all those middle managers who we really need in the armed forces, who are jumping ship early to pursue a second career because they're not sure where defence is going in the next 10 years.
And morale is terrible.
Morale is I don't want to overstate it, but it could be a lot healthier than it is at the moment.
Yeah.
And
Peter,
that's why we need to sort this out.
No, we do. I thank you very much for coming on and giving us your expert opinion, and I've no doubt, Peter, we'll have you back on over the course of the next few weeks. Thank you. And it's interesting, isn't it? Peter Caddick-Adams saying he's surprised in many ways that the Tory backbenchers have stayed quiet on this for as long as they have. Yeah, I am worried what Washington think. And really rather backing that up is Lieutenant General Ben Hodges, who's commander of the US Army in Europe, and he said Britain's position as a key ally and a leading member of NATO would be at risk if its armed forces got any smaller. Well, let's just talk you through for a moment how small they've got. In 2010, there were 102,000 soldiers in the British Army. There are now fewer than 80,000 soldiers in the British Army, and these proposed cuts would see it below 70,000. In terms of the Royal Air Force, from the day David Cameron came in, there were 35,000 personnel. There are now 29,000 personnel. And in terms of the Royal Air Force, it's gone from 40,000 personnel to 30,000 personnel. I think we're making a very, very grave error. It is impossible to tell what any future threats to the world may or may not be. And I'm asking you, would you support, as I would, more investment in UK defence? And if you agree with that, call me on 0345 6060 973. Maybe you think the old days have gone, we don't need troops in such big numbers anymore, in which case you can text to 84850. Or perhaps you think we need a different kind of defence force, one that is aimed at countering terrorism, rather than one that needs to confront armies on a battlefield, in which case you can tweet using the hashtag Farage and LBC at LBC. The time is now 10:15. Time for the break.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC.
Sleeping Beauty. Now, a mother wants her son's schools to ban the children's classic because the slumbering princess does not give her consent to be kissed. Sarah Hall says the fairy tale sends an inappropriate message to young children as it reinforces the notion it's acceptable for men to kiss women while they are asleep.
It is obviously a problem in society. Men feel entitled.
Just let children have their innocence, please.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast.
With Hampton by Hilton. Book direct for the lowest price.
Every weekday morning from 7, only on LBC.
The binder's broken again, and it's so slow and awkward.
Binding will always be a bind with a budget machine and supplies that aren't really up to it in the first place. Talk to Single Source Binding Machines. Their precision German-made binding machines are built to last for superbly bound documents every time, quickly and reliably, complete with free lifetime maintenance.
Call 0207 515 0539.
Exclusions apply. Lifetime maintenance based on purchase of supplies for the product's lifetime.
Banning stuff. Seems every week someone wants to do it. But I reckon you're old enough to know what's good for you. So I just want you to have a think about what you drink at home through the week. The one because you're cooking with wine. The couple in front of the telly, the extra one to finish off the evening. Cutting out just a few of those drinks could help improve your mood. And would you really miss him? But you know what? It's your call. Have a little less, feel a lot better. See how at drinkaware.co.uk.
The best place for sleepyheads is in their bridge bedding bed.
At Bridge Bedding, we have hundreds of beds and mattresses in stock from the biggest brands in the UK. We'll beat any price on a like-for-like basis and we'll deliver for free. So before you buy your next new bed, visit a Bridge Bedding Centre, Rectory Grove, Leigh-on-Sea, Upminster Road, Hornchurch, or online at bridgebedding.com.
The best place for sleepyheads is in their bridge bedding bed.
Whether your business is small or large, your ambitions for it are always big. And so are ours. That's why, no matter what size your business, we have local business relationship managers who'll help you along the way. So with us in your corner, the sky's the limit. To see why we've been awarded Business Bank of the Year 3 years running, visit santanderbusiness.co.uk. Here to help your business prosper. Santander.
Business Moneyfacts Award 2015 to 2017.
If you own a Swiss watch and it's time to sell it, speak to watches.co.uk. The whole process runs like clockwork. Rolex, Patek Philippe, Omega and more. It only takes a couple of ticks and we pay immediately. Or if you just fancy a change, we could take yours in part exchange. From time on your hands to money in your pocket, it couldn't be easier with watches.co.uk. the pre-owned Swiss watch specialist.
If you haven't taxed your car, here's something to think about. At the DVLA, we have the records of over 37 million vehicles on our database. Currently, we are clamping or impounding over 10,000 untaxed vehicles every month. It's nothing personal. It's the law. So if you haven't taxed your car, we'll find it. Tax it or lose it. Go to gov.uk/DVLA/car tax.
Christmas comes early to Renault Retail Group. Because this month only, save up to £4,200 against new on a nearly new car. That's up to £4,200 off any nearly new car across the Renault range. Plus, get £200 cashback and 1 year's free servicing. Huge savings at Renault Retail Group. Find your nearest dealer at renaultretail.co.uk. Renault Finance only. Representative 7.9% APR.
The Nigel Farage Show. Text 84850.
We're discussing the dwindling number of members of our armed forces and whether, in fact, there's a false investment going on here. Does it need more money or does it need more targeted money? And when we get to 11 o'clock, we're going to talk about one of the central issues of the Brexit campaign, namely the common fisheries policy and the desire of Leavers for us to come out of that policy. Because the government is talking about transition, there is some doubt as to actually when this might be. And I went out on a fishing boat from the Kent port of Ramsgate a couple of months ago, and we will interview a family fishing on that boat and how quotas impact upon their life. We'll also be talking a bit about the hundreds of thousands of people in this country who go out and try with a rod and line and catch bass, and they could be in for a terrible shock in a few weeks' time as a result of a European Commission judgment. But back to defence. You know, I talked to Peter Caddick-Adams, and the one thing that he and I agreed very strongly on is that if you continue to cut the size of your armed forces, you do send a very strange message to the world, not just to those who might wish us harm, but to those, indeed, who are our closest allies, such as the Americans. My first caller on this is Steve in Cheltenham. Good morning, Steve.
Good morning, Nigel. I hope you can hear me okay.
I can, very well indeed, thank you. Now, what's your interest in this subject, Steve?
Well, very simply, I've been in the defence industry for a number of years, and unlike Peter, I'm not an analyst, I'm an actualist. Namely, I'm involved in the European defence markets and activities of several nations in Europe and beyond. So I'm aware of what's going on that he's probably not. And I have to say, it's not just about numbers. Like the NHS, Nigel, you can spend billions and have little effect.
Yes.
There's always a demand for more. Well, what does more mean? More people or more technology or more capability? I think the first question is, does more equal better? And that's a question that few people, can answer.
Well, what about, Steve, trying does less equal better?
Less what?
Well, fewer. I mean, what this next round of cuts talks about is not just fewer troops. It actually talks too about not upgrading battle tanks, etc.
Well, wrong again. Personally, I'm involved in the upgrade of battle tanks, and I can tell you now that being involved in the UK battle tanks is every bit that people don't expect, and that the government is spending billions on upgrading infantry fighting vehicles. Billions. And the capabilities of those is world-class, double plus.
Steve, are you a manufacturer?
No.
You're not, but you're involved in the sale of defence equipment, yeah?
No, I'm involved in the technology behind defence equipment.
Okay, fine.
You need to be very, very careful. In the 1950s, it was very easy, Nigel, to see what the threat was. It was very simple. Look to the east, and it was Russia, and they had Germany as a speed bump, and that was it. Now I think the threat is, well, what is it? Is it a roadside bomb? Is it an IED? Is it cyber security? And we're spending billions on cyber security, which is the best way to kill an army, by far.
Yes, I mean, and so somewhere here there's a crossover, isn't there, between what is defence and what do our security services do?
Right, I agree. I mean, of course, there is a limit beyond which you can't go. And I think the trouble is our government is actually extending our forces to missions that they can't quite keep up with. And you need a certain number of, whether it be vehicles or ships or aircraft. And if you take the good example of the F-35, and I'm deeply involved in that program as well.
Yeah.
It's a massive program of fighter jets. And they cost 4 or 5 times what they were expected to because the American government has suckered everybody in. I think you just need to be mindful that across Europe, everyone's in the same pain, and I also deal with the other governments of Europe. They're also struggling.
But, Steve, the other governments of Europe seem very, very keen to spend nearer 1% on defence rather than the 2% that NATO asks for, don't they?
Yeah, they're right, and they're very clever about that as well, because I think they gang together in different ways through NATO. The Americans, by the way, look at what we're doing in Europe, and don't forget, you can add up all of Europe, all of the rest of the world, nearly, with the exception of perhaps the Russian community, it's about a third of what America spends. They are simply in a...
Yes. No, they are. But you know, they do want strong allies, and they've always taken the United Kingdom very seriously. And one wonders for how much longer that is going to be the case. Steve, let me ask you, I mean, you know, my kind of test for this, if you like, and you may say I'm outdated, but I do understand the cyber threat and all of that. But let me ask you, as somebody involved in this industry, if the Argentinian government was to change and another invasion of the Falkland Islands took place, could we, right now, with the decline of the Royal Navy and the merchant fleets and our services in general, could we send a task force to retake the Falklands now?
Well, we have a different view of taking the fort. First of all, you've got to say what would be the threat. We know what material the Argentinians have got and they could pose against us. For example, use that good example. Could we send 35 warships like we did in 1982?
Yeah.
No, because we don't have that many, number one.
Yes.
But the 4 or 5 we would send would outperform the 35 or 40 we had by a factor of 3 or 4. Put simply, the weaponry we have right now and the sophisticated radar systems are absolutely world-class.
But you couldn't... But okay, I take the point, Steve, but ultimately, however high-tech you are, whatever kit you've got, you still need boots on the ground, don't you?
Right, you're right. No army, there's no war that's ever been fought that's of meaningful value without boots on the ground. You're dead right. Vietnam, South Korea, you can name them all there. You do need people. Okay, but we wouldn't be on our own. We're not geared up to fight a global war in the way that we were in 1955.
No, I understand that. Steve, do you think it's right that this government should stick to at least 2% on defence spending?
Well, actually, next year and the years after, I think it's ramping up. We are updating several platforms. We're building new vessels, new aircraft. We are looking at different trainers. I think there's a cost of doing defence that is invisible, though, whether it be material, machines, logistics. It's a very complicated market, and it's not just about big kit that you can see trundling on the screens of the TV.
Yeah, no.
If you want to feel, it is very different, and I would urge and suggest wise caution and wise counsel about saying more is better. I think it's more targeted. And if you go and look at what we did in Afghanistan, the weaponry we needed there, there's no point rolling a tank there. You need something very, very different.
No.
So I would just urge caution against saying...
No, Steve, no, listen, you've made the point absolutely clearly and very, very well, and I thank you for the call. Steve from Cheltenham saying, more is not always better. Fine, I understand that. Got to target the money, got to go for high-tech solutions. I understand all of that too, but I just wonder... for the rest of you out there, you know, do you feel a little bit less safe knowing that these kind of cuts are being made in our armed forces? And perhaps you're related to somebody who's currently serving in the armed forces, and I wonder, how is their morale? Matt from Sheffield takes the view by text. He says, it's madness. We are cutting our armed forces, especially during the massive threat of ISIS. Steve from Sutton says, all right, if they say they're not taking on any more, one thing, but promising these boys a career and then having them risking their lives and then dumping them is a betrayal. Well, Steve, there have been examples of that. Examples of people, you know, coming back from Afghanistan and effectively getting their P45s, and that's one of the reasons why I think that actually morale is pretty bad. Further defence cuts are utter madness. Switzerland, which is a neutral country, has more battle tanks than we have, says Richard. And Richard, I was driving through Switzerland earlier this week and I saw the Swiss Army out on manoeuvres. And you know what? There were lots and lots of them. Billy is calling me from Camden. He's a first-time caller to this show. Good morning, Billy.
Good morning, Nigel. How are you?
Well, I'm all right, but I'm kind of... I've been watching, Billy, since 2010. I've been watching a Tory government that goes to the polls and says, we're the great patriotic party that will stand up for the nation and for the armed forces and for tradition. And what I see is them ramping up spending on things like foreign aid, and yet cutting our armed forces in the most extraordinary way. And I know I get accused, Billy, of knocking the Tories very often on this show.
That's
but,
all right.
but honestly, there's something deeply hypocritical about what they say at election time and then what they do. And I'm just hoping, Billy, that Tobias Ellwood and Johnny Mercer and Nicholas Soames and others who are making noises this morning, I'm hoping they actually stand up and rebel. I really am, Billy.
Well, I actually feel less safe with the cuts. I think the art is a great career choice for men and women who want a career out there. And I think it's bad. I think we should keep Trident.
Yes.
As a deterrent and be a big player in the world.
Trident, of course, is expensive. And, you know, there's been a big debate about it, but frankly, it doesn't seem there's any other real alternative. The one downside with Trident, Billy, of course, is that it's not entirely our independent weapon, because the Americans have the codes. But all right, so, Billy, you think it matters that we have a big position on the world stage, yeah?
Yeah, definitely.
Definitely. So you're against these cuts, and you feel a bit less safe?
Yeah, I definitely feel less safe. I've got family in the Falklands.
Oh, right.
If the cuts were in the 80s, then it might have been a different turnout.
Yeah. OK, Billy, no, you've made your point. I'm being told here, of course, they don't have enough money because they're spending 40 billion on your stupid idea to leave the EU. No. My idea is not to spend 40 billion on leaving the EU. I'm not sure why we should spend anything to leave the EU, but more of that perhaps in a moment. You're listening to the Sunday edition of the Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC. The time is now 10:30, and it's time for the news with Simon Conway.
3 children are among 5 people who've been killed after a stolen car hit a tree. It happened in the Meanwood area of Leeds last night. 2 15-year-olds are being held by police. The Prime Minister is being urged to keep the UK in the EU's customs union to solve the Northern Irish border issue. Ireland's EU Commissioner says the country may use its veto to prevent Brexit talks from moving on to trade. The Home Secretary says new laws could be introduced to protect women from being harassed and intimidated at abortion clinics. Ealing Council in West London recently voted to ban protesters outside clinics in the borough. LBC weather, a cold and frosty start with icy patches. Bright this morning but turning cloudier later. Some showers in the north and west and a high of 7 degrees.
LBC travel, it's very slow in Finchley on the A1 Greats North Way going northbound. 2 lanes are closed because of an accident involving a van and a car at Ashley Lane. It's slow in Basildon on the A13 westbound after an accident earlier on between the 5 Bells interchange and the Stamford La Hope turn-off. All lanes are now open. On the M23 southbound it's very slow. There's a lane closed on the exit Slip Road to Junction 9 for Gatwick Airport because a car's broken down. And on the Docklands Light Railway there are replacement buses running via Canary Wharf between West Ferry and Island Gardens. That's because of engineering works today. LBC Travel, I'm Dave Goff.
This is LBC.
At Oak Furnitureland, everyone knows our furniture is 100% solid hardwood.
And it's also up to 50% off.
But most importantly, it's 100% solid hardwood.
Yes, but don't forget it's also up to 50% off.
Don't miss Oak Furnitureland's end of autumn sale, where you'll find quality 100% solid hardwood with up to 50% off. Our end of autumn sale must end Monday. Order today. There's still time for guaranteed Christmas delivery. Visit oakfurnitureland.co.uk to find your nearest store.
The DVLA can spot an untaxed car a mile off. So, whether you're from Sutton-on-Sea and drive an SUV, or East Ham and own a white van, the fact is we have the records of over 37 million vehicles on our database. So if you haven't taxed your car, we'll find it. Tax it or lose it. Go to gov.uk/DVLA/taxitnow.
I know what the plough looks like in the night sky. I know how Eskimos kiss. I know a time when a mullet wasn't a fish. And I definitely know this piece of music. But I don't know my state pension.
Find out more about your state pension and how much it should be. Get to know your pension
Visit yourpension.gov.uk.
Here's a smart Black Friday offer. Save a huge £60 on Hive Active Heating, now only £186.75. With Hive, you can control your heating from your phone, so you can always come back to a warm home and never have to heat an empty one. What's more, installation by trusted British Gas engineers included. Join over 500,000 people already using Hive Active Heating. But be quick, offer ends on the 1st of December. Search Hive for all our great Black Friday offers. Hive services require broadband, terms apply.
Imagine if your business's complete IT requirements could come straight out of a box. Well, that's what Intersys can offer. Complete IT management, cybersecurity, backup and disaster recovery, all straight out of the box.
To see how Intersys can manage all your IT, leaving you free to run the business, just search intersys.co.uk. That's INTERSYS.
And think IT out of the box with Intersys, a partner you can trust.
These days, there's a better deal to be had online for almost everything. So when it comes to selling our cars, why do we go running back to the last century and trade it in? Why not stay right here and sell your car to WeBuyAnyCar.com? Then use the money to get a better deal on your next car. It's quick, it's easy, and there's a branch near you. Change the way you sell your car. Enter your reg number now at WeBuyAnyCar.com. Terms and conditions apply. See WeBuyAnyCar.com/info.
Do you take credit cards, she says? Yeah. Like I've got a card machine in my toolbox?
No one pays cash these days. I use a PayPal Here card reader. Fits in my pocket. I take cards, even contactless. With no monthly fees. Job done.
Get paid by card or contactless wherever you do business with the PayPal Here card reader. Just £35 until November the 30th. Search for PayPal Here card reader.
Right, you're round then.
Sorry, pal, not carrying cash.
Subject to application approval, terms and transaction fees apply.
The Nigel Farage Show on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
As it's planned to cut the British Army below 70,000 people, I'm asking whether actually we need some more investment in defence, or are the politicians in Westminster right? Does no one care anymore? Or do we need to spend the money better and target it more at high tech? But before I get to that, a couple of Brexit-related comments that I can't resist this morning. The first is that our good friend Michel Barnier loves this country. He's now saying, of course, that during the transition period, all new EU laws that get made will apply directly to the United Kingdom. But, of course, we won't be able to be in the room and even help discuss their formation. It almost makes you think, doesn't it, of no taxation without representation. But that, apparently, is what the Prime Minister wants to sign us up for. And when she was challenged about this by Jacob Rees-Mogg in the House of Commons, she said she thought it was unlikely that there'd be new EU laws during that period that would apply to us. Well, he's making it very, very clear, Mr. Barnier. And by the way, you know, I wrote him a letter asking for a meeting, and he came back to me and said he'd meet me in the bar. And I said that wasn't really good enough. I now do have a date in the new year to go into the Berlaymont building and to meet him, and I'll be following on, of course, from Nick Clegg and Lord Adonis and Ken Clark and virtually every Remainer in the country who's been to see him. So I will be going in there and trying to make the point that there are 17.4 million people plus now who simply want us to get on with this. And I really rather liked a letter that I saw yesterday from Chris Potter from Otley in West Yorkshire. And this letter was published in the Daily Telegraph yesterday. It said, "Dear Sir, imagine going to an auction and the auctioneer says, this is lot number 120 and we can open the bidding at £2,000. Someone in the room shouts, what is lot 120, please? And the auctioneer replies, I won't tell you until the reserve is reached. That is what the EU is saying to Britain. We should walk away now." Well done, Chris Potter. Because it is, you know, we're being asked to pay some extraordinary sum of money without, at the moment, any guarantee of anything in return at all. They really are putting us in an impossible position, as indeed, to a large extent, now are the Irish government. The Taoiseach, their PM, Leo Varadkar, and their Commissioner, Hogan, basically saying that Northern Ireland must now stay part of the single market / customs union. And I am amazed that the Irish government is taking this line. They're even threatening to veto, future arrangements with the United Kingdom. I do understand, guys, that your farmers need the British market very badly. You sell about 50% of your beef into the UK market. I understand that, I get that. In fact, I'm sympathetic to that. So rather than arguing, rather than trying from Dublin to dictate to Westminster what we should or shouldn't do, why don't you go to Brussels and act in the interests of your farmers and your businesses and argue that a continued tariff-free trade deal would be the best solution, not just for the island of Ireland, but for all of us. But unfortunately, that is not what they're doing. We will see whether the Irish Prime Minister survives a vote of confidence that will take place in Dublin this very week. OK, back to defence cuts, and I have to say, I've just, all my life I've seen this. I've seen Conservative governments who pretend to be strong on defence, and actually they're the ones that always seem to cut. And Labour, ironically, given that the general public perception is it's Tories strong on this, Labour weak on this, Labour generally, in many ways, have been better for the armed forces. I'm going to ask Celia in North Wembley what she thinks about these cuts and whether it really matters. Good morning, Celia.
Hi. Yeah, I mean, what's the point of increasing defence budget if the army can't get recruits? I mean, apparently people don't want to join the army, and I'm just wondering whether that's because they don't want to go abroad. They're frightened they're going to be sent abroad to fight some war they don't believe in. So if they were told that they were going to just be trained to defend this country, and if anything happened abroad, they could choose as to whether to go or not. Perhaps we'd be able to get some recruits.
Yeah, I don't think we could ever do that, Celia. Look, I think, isn't it a bit chicken and egg here? I mean, I really don't believe that people don't join the army because they fear they might be sent abroad to fight. I do understand that there are people who've come back from Iraq and Afghanistan and have asked themselves some very long, hard questions about what those conflicts were about. And of course I understand that. But, Celia, actually this is chicken and egg. They see an army that is diminishing in size. They ask themselves whether it's the right place to be. And actually, Celia, it's actually worse than that. It's worse than people not being recruited. People are leaving. I mean, just for example, Celia, listen to this. Matt from Epsom says, I'm currently serving. I would say morale is very low. The workload is the same. However, there are 20,000 less of us to do it. So many signing off at all ranks. And that, Celia, is now the message I'm getting, is that many in the army, if they see an alternative career to go to, are going for it quickly because they fear that in this atmosphere of cuts, it's not the right place to be. So I think it's a bit chicken and egg, this one.
OK.
That's just my view, but I take your point, Celia, and thank you. Celia thinking, well, maybe it's the fact we've been fighting wars we shouldn't have been. I don't believe it is that. I really, really don't. And a very interesting one here from Joey. Shocking that we can't defend the UK. Is this government blind to the threat of the European army, for which you, Nigel, and Liam Fox were ridiculed? A large trade area with supranational pretensions, a flag, an anthem, with eyes on areas like Belarus, is a threat. Are we witnessing another 1936? All the signs are there. Wake up, history continually repeats itself, and governments never learn. Joey, I am genuinely concerned about the militarisation of the European Union. I'm genuinely concerned about its expansionist tendencies, and I'm not making this up. It was Mr. Barroso, the former Commission President, who said, we are building an empire. And I think you've seen already in the Ukraine, by provoking the overthrow of an elected leader, that the EU, which has told everybody it's all about peace and goodwill to men, could, at some point in the future, if it does get a powerful military, actually be a destabilising factor. So yes, I'm concerned about it. Kumar is calling me from Ealing. Good morning, Kumar.
Good morning, sir. 3 points.
Yes.
If you're Trident, Brexit / EU, and then finally public finances. Okay. Trident is estimated to cost 100 billion. That's assuming the MOD can bring it on budget and on time. When was the last time the MOD brought anything on budget on time? Look at the Nimrod and look at this aircraft carrier, where for 10 years we were out of the aircraft carrier. We have to rely on the French. God help us. Now,
Go
on Trident, when was the a scenario that you can give me that you can envisage a British Prime Minister or a French President pressing the independent nuclear button without the permission and authorization of the President of the United States? It's a total fantasy, and God help us if that happens to be Trump at the time. Turning to the...
Well, you could argue, Kumar, that actually what Trump has done when he's been travelling around the world, rather than ignoring what's been happening in North Korea. He's tried to wake the rest of the world up to it. He's tried to get the fiercest possible sanctions put on North Korea. He's trying to stop North Korea from carrying on with its program of missile testing. You could argue that what Trump is doing is trying to stop North Korea becoming a nuclear power. Isn't that a good thing to do?
I don't want to get on Trump because we'll go off at a tangent. Let's stick to the point.
Well, I know I am sticking to the point, Kumar, because you said, are there any circumstances in which anybody would ever contemplate using these weapons? And the answer, I think, is, you know, if Mad Kim was in a position where he could fire missiles at us, we've got to have missiles, haven't we?
Do you really want me to comment on Trump? Because flip-flops every...
No, I didn't. I asked you about North Korea. I went back to your question. You said to me, let's take Trump out of it. Let's take Trump out of it, because I know that he raises passions. But if a state like North Korea did have the delivery systems that put us directly under threat, would we not be mad in those circumstances not to have missiles ourselves?
Okay, let me respond. Trump said on the campaign trail that instead of the U.S. defending the allies against North Korea, we should put more nuclear weapons in the hands of the Japanese and the South Koreans, and should defend themselves. The moment he becomes president, he flip-flops on that. When it'll be... I'm not...
Kumar, I've said I'm trying to draw a truce with you about Trump. I'm talking about the argument. Look, you've made the point. Trident costs a fortune, all right? And it does. A fortune. And there are people out there who say, well, actually, to maintain our traditional forces in a modern high-tech era, if we scrap Trident, we'd have more than enough money to do it. All right? Are you arguing, Kumar, that we should scrap Trident?
Absolutely, and spend more on conventional weapons. Because if you look at our biggest enemies, who are they? They're Al-Qaeda, they're ISIS, and they're the Taliban. Are you seriously telling me we're going to use nuclear weapons against them? Of course not. The only way we can defeat them is through conventional weapons.
Kumar, I can't disagree with that point. As it stands, ISIS don't have nuclear capability. Let's all on this Sunday morning pray to God that they never, ever do. And I thank you for your call. You're listening to the Sunday edition of the Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC. It's 10:45.
This is LBC.
This Christmas you could give the same old thing. Or you could give the gift that's out of this world.
100.
At Flight Experience London, take off, fly and land a Boeing 737-800. An officially licensed Boeing product. It's the ultimate flight simulator used for real pilot training. Taking Christmas to the max. Book online now from £109 at london.flightexperience.com and give the gift of flight at Flight Experience London.
How's the chemotherapy going to make me feel?
Is your mum going to get better?
Can I go on that cancer drug trial I read about?
When do I know if my cancer's gone for good?
If you or your loved ones have questions about cancer, Cancer Research UK can help you find the answers. With years of research behind us, we can give you the expert guidance and information you need. Just go online and search Cancer Research UK today.
Fleet managers. Maybe you don't use fleet tracking because maybe your fleet seems safe and secure. Maybe your fuel costs seem okay. Maybe your drivers manage just fine without it. Maybe it's time to stop running your business on maybes. Fleetmatic's fleet tracking solutions can help you reduce your costs, serve more customers, and improve the safety of your employees' driving habits anytime, anywhere. Maybe that's worth a call. Text the word fleet to 66777 or visit fleetmatics.co.uk. Fleetmatics, a Verizon company.
Whether your business is small or large, your ambitions for it are always big. And so are ours. That's why, no matter what size your business, we have local business relationship managers who'll help you along the way. So with us in your corner, the sky's the limit. To see why we've been awarded Business Bank of the Year 3 years running, visit santanderbusiness.co.uk. Here to help your business prosper. Santander.
Business Moneyfacts Award 2015 to 2017.
Here's a smart Black Friday offer. Save a huge £60 on Hive Active Heating, now only £186.75. With Hive, you can control your heating from your phone, so you can always come back to a warm home and never have to heat an empty one. What's more, installation by a trusted British Gas engineer is included. Join over 500,000 people already using Hive Active Heating. But be quick, offer ends on the 1st of December. Search Hive for all our great Black Friday offers. Hive services require broadband, terms apply.
At Homebase, we're all about great Christmas value, like 7-foot artificial trees from just £15, and you can have it delivered to your door for only £5. Homebase, always low prices, terms and conditions apply.
Here are the swallows, gathering to make the journey to Africa and glorious sunshine. And here's the Jones family, gathering at number 37, about to go into hibernation. Let's hope their boiler's in good shape, or it could be a miserable winter.
At Swale Heating, our expert engineers can install an A-rated Worcester Bosch boiler, which comes with a warranty of up to 10 years and a year's free cover for the whole central heating system, subject to survey. For a quote, visit swaleheating.com. Rely on us to keep you warm.
Kevin, did you open the kids' advent calendar again? Sorry. Keep everyone happy this Christmas with Mars and Nestle advent calendars, now 2 for £3. Another Christmas deal for you from the Co-op. 85 to 111 gram, individual price £2 to £3 each, cheapest item free, subject to availability. See participating stores for details. Offer ends 5th of December.
The Nigel Farage Show on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
Does a British Army going down to below 70,000 personnel in the next few years send the wrong message out to the rest of the world? And what's happening with recruitment? What's happening with morale? Now, Celia suggested from North Wembley that the problem was that people won't join because they think the foreign wars that we've been involved in weren't justified. Mick on Facebook takes the opposite view. He says people are leaving or not joining because there is no war to go to. When Iraq and Afghanistan were on, the military were inundated with people wanting to join. I don't know whether that's true. Christine thinks that HS2 also costs a fortune. I know where the money would be spent better. Yeah, well, there's also the point is they're not about the foreign aid budget. I've mentioned it once so far this morning, but I do get a tweet here saying defence should be the first priority for any government. No more foreign aid. Donate privately and invest instead in our armed services. The islands need defending. We need a sign outside every army barracks that says invest to save. And in terms of morale, because this does interest me, Nigel, I'm a weapons technician in the RAF. Do a bit of research and you'll be amazed how many soldiers, technicians, etc. are leaving. And no one seems to care. What a mess, says Kieran. And Kieran, I don't know that it's people don't care, but what I do know from my conversations off camera, and off radio mic, the green room conversation that I've had over the years with leading political figures from all the parties is that they view defence as a very low priority issue because they think people frankly don't care about it, and they think that the way people vote will not alter in terms of the way the government is seen to have dealt with this issue. They don't think it matters. Goodness me. If the Conservative Party felt their vote was threatened, they wouldn't have cut since 2010 in the way that they have. That's my view. Please tell me I'm wrong on 0345 6060 973. And John is calling me from Gravesend. John, good morning.
Very good morning to you. Procurement is the problem. We're not getting enough bang for our buck. It works out like this. The UK spends 40 billion on defence.
Yep.
Russia, 60 billion.
Mm-hmm.
Americans, because they're the biggest killers anyway, 600 billion per year. I want to know how it is that Russia can have a Sukhoi Su-35 flanker at half the cost of an American F-35, known in America as the flying garbage truck. Why it is...
So, John, we could be paying.
Being offered.
So we could be paying too much money. We could be paying too much money for kit. Is point number one. Point number two, of course, is I guess our soldiers, sailors, and airmen and women are paid a bit more than the Russians. And could it be that the Soviets have a smaller bureaucracy than we do in the Ministry of Defence? Is that possible?
Well, they've got an army of a force of 1.9 million now been upped to support, so we can't call it that their wages are low.
Right.
It's expensive. This week, the MOD has offered experienced helicopter pilots a £70,000 golden handcuff to keep them in their jobs for 6 years. The MOD has announced that in the last 5 years they've lost 1,049 helicopter pilots that have left the Army and the Navy, and there's only 508 joined up. And the other point is this. the army the military should multi-role. In other words, forget overseas adventures. They can do their defence job, and they can also be used in a civil capacity for border security, ports, and all that. And they can then be given. You get spearhead battalions that are on duty. They then can be used in civil society, attached to the police, with the powers of special constable, and they can rotate on that basis.
Well, yes. I mean, I have to say, I think in times of, big civil emergencies, then of course the armed forces could be a massive, massive resource and help to our police forces, and I do understand that, John. But your basic point is, it isn't just about the money we spend. You don't think it's being spent properly, do you?
We've got Lockheed Martin and American companies that have got little niche industries around the UK. And then what happens is the politicians are offered the F-35, which was offered to them before it was when it was just a computer program.
Yep.
It wasn't even a built model. And then what happens then is, well, if you don't buy the F-35, we might have to shut a couple of factories, then constituencies. So in other words, having American influence or in industry in the UK forces us to buy American. And even Trump himself is fighting to get the F-35 bill down, and we're going to be suckers, and we're going to pay full price.
John, you're not the first person to tell me that we've made some bad spending decisions in terms of defence kit. I've heard that from a former cabinet minister too. I thank you very much for your call. And John saying, look, we haven't always spent money wisely. We've paid over the odds for some of the kit that we've got. And even if that is true, and I suspect that it probably is, that's still not a reason, in my view, for cutting the army down below 70,000 people. That's how I feel about it. I think it's obvious what they're up to. We are going to be part of an EU army. We're just not being told yet. Mark my words, says Madeline. Well, Madeline, we pushed very hard on this show a few weeks ago when it came to PESCO, this advancement of military integration within the European Union, and I'm pleased to say at this stage we are not a part of it. However, we certainly haven't ruled out doing joint exercises, etc., with an emerging European army. And one of the big arguments being made about the European army by Mr. Juncker and others is you don't need to spend 2% of your budget on this. You can probably spend 1% because we'll get economies of scale across Europe. And that at the very moment when Trump is saying, hey guys, unless you lot all are prepared to pay your 2%, we might seriously consider whether our support for you, is there whenever you need it to be. So this is really a really big moment. And I feel I do want, and by the way, it doesn't mean every single American foreign policy decision we should follow. A special relationship is about being able to say no as well as yes, depending on circumstances, just as Harold Wilson did to Lyndon Johnson over Vietnam back in 1966. But I do really think that we need to be of a sufficient size for the Americans to continue viewing us as their most important ally in the world. I would rather put my future security with America, whoever its president is, than with Mr. Juncker and Barnier and the boys in Brussels. That's how I feel. I wonder how Greg in Reading feels on this subject. Good morning, Greg.
Morning.
Good morning. So what do you think, Greg? I mean, are we cutting back too far?
Yeah, we're cutting back too far. So I'm currently serving in the armed forces.
Right.
And we're cutting back too far. So at the moment, we're getting cuts on defence, so on spending. So then we go to civilian companies or industry to fill the gaps because they can sometimes provide it for cheaper. And then you're getting stuck in a loophole of nobody's doing their job or not everybody's doing their job at certain points because it's taken by industry, which then leaves soldiers sitting around bored, which makes them more likely to sign off or more likely to get out the armed forces.
And Greg, are you seeing people just getting out if they find an alternative job to go to?
Yeah, I know a lot of people in there constantly just looking or waiting their time till they can either get out or just riding out until their pension kicks in so they can get out. So,
and can I ask, without too many details, can I ask which branch of the armed forces you're in?
It's having the Royal Logistics Corps.
Right. Okay. Well, that's quite a lot of information actually, but if you're prepared to give it, fine. And so Greg, morale is awful. What could the government do to turn this around? What signal? What message do you men and women serving in the armed forces need? What do you need to hear?
So we need to be looked after more by the government. So a lot of soldiers are living in substandard accommodation because there's no money to be spent on it.
Yeah.
And when that's your home and that's your life and you're living in somewhere with no hot water or no heating, it definitely takes a dent in the soldiers' morale, and then having nothing to do because it's been put to industry, or in some cases you're overworked because they've cut so many soldiers or so many have left, and then you're doing the job of 3-4 people and still expected to deliver the same results with less resources and less time.
Greg, a very depressing phone call, but thank you for making it and being as frank as you were. And my last call on this subject is Hannah, who's calling from Leeds. Hannah, good morning.
Hi, good morning. I'm just listening to what Greg was saying there. It's absolutely the same as what my husband's experienced. He's in the military, and he's getting out as soon as his paperwork comes through. Basically, because he now fundamentally can't do his job because just the resources keep getting pulled out from under him. A couple of months ago, he spent weeks and weeks planning quite a serious exercise. For every time he went to go and get approval for this exercise to go through, he would go up to the top corridor, and they'd say, no, there's another £10,000 got cut off the budget for this. You've got to go back and do the whole thing again. So actually, the amount of time that he wasted because of cuts was just ridiculous. And you hear it from every single soldier. It's 4-letter word, I'm getting out. That is the. Do
you feel, Hannah, as a forces family, do you feel let down by the government?
I think it's not so much let down by the government. It's this constant battle that we're not as important to people as things like the NHS or schools, because people understand the NHS and schools. And the thing that happens the most is that the electorate,
a lot of it's about votes too, isn't it? A lot of it's about that. Hannah, we're out of time. I thank you for your call. A lot of frank phone calls there. People not feeling very happy serving in the armed forces. In the next hour, I'm going to highlight the plight of UK fishermen. Back in August, I went down to Ramsgate. I met Eddie on his fishing boat called the Boy Joshua. The aim of the trip was to find out the impact of a CFP on our fishing stocks. All of it, of course, being set and regulated by the European Union. I want to know, do you think it's time that we left the common fisheries policy? Should we do it now? If so, call me on 0345 6060 973. Or maybe you think a transition means we stay in it, in which case text to 84850 and go to the LBC website, lbc.co.uk, to see video and pictures of my trip out there and my encounter with the UK Border Force.
On FM, online, on your mobile and on digital radio. Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 11 o'clock, 3 children are among 5 people who've been killed after a stolen car hit a tree. It happened in the Meanwood area of Leeds last night. 2 15-year-olds are in custody. LBC's Martin Lindsay has more details from our Yorkshire newsroom.
Police say they were met with a scene of complete carnage when they arrived at the crash site on Stonegate Road. We now know among those killed were 3 boys, including 2 15-year-olds and a 12-year-old. 2 teenagers are also in custody. Police say it's not yet clear if the 5 victims and 2 suspects were all in the car at the time of the crash.
Ireland's European Commissioner says the country may use its EU veto to prevent Brexit talks from moving on to trade. Phil Hogan says his country wants guarantees there won't be a hard border with Northern Ireland after Britain leaves the EU. He claims the problem can be solved by the UK staying in the customs union. But the International Development Secretary Liam Fox insists that won't happen.
We don't want there to be a hard border, but the United Kingdom is going to be leaving the customs union and the single market. We've always actually had exceptions for Ireland, whether it's in our voting rights, our rights of residence in the UK. We've always accepted a certain asymmetry, and that will have to be part of whatever agreement we come to with the European Union.
It's reported a Labour member of staff who's died was being investigated over allegations about pornography. The party says the person died suddenly and unexpectedly. It's understood he'd been suspended from the party recently. People who use drones may have to register the devices and sit safety awareness tests. The government's looking into new legislation to tackle rogue operators. It could also ban the machines from being flown near airports or above 400 metres. For the first time, Royal Navy sailors are performing the Changing the Guard ceremony outside Buckingham Palace. 86 sailors have spent a month learning the routines, which are traditionally performed by the Army. England's cricketers are heading for defeat in the opening Ashes test in Brisbane. Australia closed day 4 on 114 without loss, just 56 runs short of victory. Moeen Ali admits England are feeling the absence of Ben Stokes, who hasn't travelled with the squad after his arrest during a night out in September.
He's a big part of this team, and the balance that he gives us, obviously then based up at 7, I come in at 8, and then we can get those low order runs as well a bit more, and we know he's not going to be here. He's not here, and we've got to get on with it, really.
LBC weather, a cold and frosty start with icy patches. Bright this morning, but turning cloudier later. Some showers in the north and west, a high of 7 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Simon Conway.
Do you realise we've been on the phone for over an hour? It's crazy, we can't talk all night. One of us has to hang up first. Yeah, well, I'm not going to. No, you hang up. No, you. No, you. No, you... Hello? Hello? Oh, she has.
With Vodafone Pay-As-You-Go One, you can stay in touch as much as you like and never pay more than £1 a day. The rest is on us, so you'll only ever have to hang up when you're ready. Search Vodafone Pay-As-You-Go One. The future is exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
Opt in and spend £1 a day for unlimited standard calls and text plus 500 meg of data in the UK and our Europe zone. Terms and exclusions at vodafone.co.uk/pay-as-you-go one.
LBC travel in West Sussex is very slow on the M23 southbound. It's because there's a lane closed on the exit slip road at junction 9 for Gatwick Airport as a car's broken down. In Chelsea, Sloane Avenue is closed both ways because of an accident between Fulham Road and Kings Road. In Arnos Grove, it's heavy on the North Circular westbound. There's a lane closed because of a burst water main at Bounds Green Road. In Hertfordshire, on the M1 southbound, a lane's closed at junction 6 for Bricket Wood for recovery work after an accident that happened yesterday. And on the rails, there's no South Western Railway service at Wimbledon today because of engineering works. LBC Travel, I'm Dave Goff.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation. The Nigel Farage Show.
For 25 years, I bored everyone to death saying we should leave the European Union. And if I was ever asked, what is your best single example of why the European Union is not good for the United Kingdom, the answer was simple: the common fisheries policy. Why? Well, under the international law of the sea, as set down in 1976 and agreed across the world, any nation has 200 miles of its fishing waters as its own exclusive economic zone for it to manage itself, or the median line. So, OK, it's 12 miles off Dover, but it's 200 miles off many parts of the North Sea. And that, under law, should be ours. But it's not, because we're part of the common fisheries policy with all the other European nations, and it divides fish stocks up on the principle of equal access to a common resource. And what I've seen over these years is an industry going frankly into terminal decline, a quota system that in many cases doesn't give the skippers enough legal catch to earn a proper living, but also leads to discards, to the throwing back of dead or dying fish on an absolutely huge scale. And you may remember, during the referendum, I had a little confrontation on the Thames with Bob Geldof, and we'll come to that a little bit later in the show. So back in August, I went down to Ramsgate and I met Eddie on his fishing boat, the boy Joshua, and the aim of the trip was to find out the impact of the common fisheries policy on our fishing stocks, on his ability to earn a living, something all is set and regulated by the European Union. Here was Eddie. I'm on Boy Joshua. We've just come out of Ramsgate Harbour. It's a lovely, lovely morning, and we're heading out with what is left of our fishing fleet in this country. I'm here with Eddie. Eddie, where are we going today? What are we trying to do?
We're going about 7 miles northeast of Ramsgate. We're trying to catch some skate and some lobsters. Hopefully we'll be successful.
Now, that was all well and good, isn't it? And, because I love skate. I mean, skate to eat's absolutely delicious. But, as I understand it, there's a bit of a problem with the number of skate you're allowed to catch.
Yes, I mean, at the moment we're allowed to catch 375 kilos a month, which, unfortunately, is live weight, so you've got to gut it, so it's going to be less than that. And that is the highest quota we've actually had this year. Most of you have been on 200 kilos, but there is a real big problem. There's a lot more skate than the quota shows, really.
Yeah, and in fact what's happened is, and frankly round from sort of Norfolk, round to the Isle of Wight, there has been in the last few years a complete explosion in skate numbers. I, as a keen angler, know this. But isn't the truth of it that what you're having to do, whatever species you're trying to catch, you're catching skate? I mean, just explain to people, you're actually throwing stuff back dead, aren't you?
Absolutely. If we're fishing for soles or we're fishing for cod, all year round we're throwing skate away because unfortunately no one has developed a sign that the skate can read to say don't go in my nets.
So what we got here is something that I think anybody who thinks about sensible management or the environment has got to be horrified by. How many fish are you throwing back dead?
Quite a lot. Absolutely quite a lot. I mean, it depends. I mean, some we can get back alive, but at the end of the day, there are some that we can't get out of the net quick enough because there's that many of them.
Now, last year, Brexit, and I know that this particular boat was carrying Brexit flags, and you wanted to get back our waters. You know, a year on, do you feel optimistic that Brexit's going to go the right way for you?
I'll say I'm frustrated. I'm frustrated with the hang-ups and the hold-ups. I do think there's a lot of obstacles being put in the way by certain parts of the media and certain politicians. I believe that it's a little bit more straightforward than they're trying to make out, and we'll have to wait and see.
Well, one of the things I would like to see, you know, regardless of how long this whole process takes, is I would love to see us actually stopping a policy where we chuck stuff back dead that could be sold in the market and actually could be quite good cheap food for people, couldn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, skate used to be a very big catch for us up to about 2007 when our fishery department decided they were going to ramp up the rules and basically overnight try and destroy us. And I mean, there's just a few of us left now. I mean, we are a dying industry as it stands at the moment, when at the end of the day we could be a nice little local profitable business employing people and putting money into the community.
So Ramsgate, you know, here you are, right on the edge of the North Foreland, got some great fishing grounds here, albeit ones you have to share with the French and the Dutch and the Belgians and everybody else, and maybe Brexit will help with that. But just explain to me, how many fishermen are there now working out of Ramsgate, and how many were there, say, 20, 30 years ago?
I think now we're down to about 10 boats probably left. Of them 10 boats, there's 7 or 8 of us who are fishing, 2 or 3 are lobster potting, whelk fishing all the time. Of those who are fishing, 2 or 3 of them now go single-handed because they can't afford to employ a crew on the amount of money that they're allowed to earn. And it's only going one way, downwards at the moment, and it's against good fish stocks in the sea that we're not allowed to target.
And this is the story that I think people don't quite get, is actually stocks of a lot of fish are remarkably good. I mean, herring stocks are very, very good, skate stocks have literally exploded, and even cod, in the northern North Sea at least, even the scientists say now we've reached back to sustainable levels. But if we're not allowed through quota to catch the stuff, then frankly, people in this industry can't earn a living. Now, we're a few miles out now, we're going to be putting up nets very shortly. What's going to be in them?
Well, hopefully some fish.
Right, we'll wait and see. Well, we'll find out in a moment what we did catch in those nets and what had to happen to those fish. Now, the big concern and the reason for this debate is that the government wants there to be a transition period, and all the signals we're getting are that we'll stay within the common fisheries policy, or at least within the rules-based system set by Brussels during that period. And I am concerned that if we stay in a transition for 2 or 3 years, that many, many more of what's left of our fishing industry will be forced out of business. I'm also very concerned for the hundreds of thousands of people in this country who go angling. They do it because they enjoy it. They do it because they want to take a fish home for tea. But they too provide lots of jobs in coastal communities, and I'll talk more at the bottom of the hour about the threat to anglers. Now, I did invite Environment Secretary Michael Gove to come onto the programme, but this was declined. I also wanted George Eustace, the Environment Minister, to come onto the show, and he also declined, but they were nice enough to send us this statement. As we have made clear, when we leave the European Union, we will leave the common fisheries policy. This gives us the opportunity to design a new domestic fishing policy, one which is in the UK's best interests and allows our industry to thrive. Yes, gentlemen, when is the question? They're not here, but I tell you who is here. Aaron Brown is here. He's a Scottish prawn fisherman, and he's head of the Fishing for Leave campaign group. Aaron, good morning.
Good morning, Nigel.
My understanding is that the government say we will leave the European Union at the end of March 2019, that we may even, in theory, leave the common fisheries policy, but we are to stay during that transition period with the same Brussels-based rules system. Is that your understanding too?
Yes, I would say it is. The question isn't so much, do we leave the common fisheries policy? Indeed, do we leave the European Union? We absolutely do. Legally, Article 50 means we're out. It's what we do thereafter is a problem, and that's where the transition's terrifying, because as Monsieur Barnier, Monsieur Juncker have said, we will have to obey the entire acquis. For people at home, that's all EU law. So effectively, we will have left, but we will be stuck in some sort of legal purgatory where we'll be obeying the same rules. And obviously the government conveniently will have adopted all those rules with the withdrawal bill. And our big concern as Fishing for Leave is that brings us under continuity of rights, and the EU is going to nail our feet to the floor and say, you left, you had your clean slate of Article 50, you've reacceded in a new deal, which the transition's part of, and therefore you'll still obey the common fisheries policy, immigration policy, agricultural policy. And by the time we get round to this new British policy, maybe at some point in the future, as you say, there'll be nobody left, especially with choke species and a discard ban. So it's really now or never for the fishing industry, and I really think the government's dawdling and ineptitude is leading this country as a whole, not just fishing, into a seriously dangerous position.
Yeah, I think we need... I have to say, I genuinely think we need to leave the common fisheries policy as soon as possible, take back our territorial waters, and not just help our industry, but also actually to do something environmentally that makes sense. You know, for years we've had talk about discards, about the throwing back of dead and dying fish, and I know Hugh Fearnley-Whittingstall fought a very big, high-profile public campaign, but as I saw out of Ramsgate the other day, we're still discarding fish, aren't we?
There is a discard ban, but it's not enforced yet fully. The green groups are pushing hard for full enforcement, full CCTV monitoring, and one finds it quite hard to argue with them because it is the only way to stop discards with a quota system. But the fundamental problem is banning discards is banning the symptoms, not the cause, which is quotas. And it's a quota regime that's caused all these problems, and that's why we very stridently are pushing and have developed new UK policy that will be more environmentally friendly. It'll allow fishermen to have a better living and allow us to take that clean slate, because the discarding of fish is lunacy environmentally, because it's putting twice the pressure on the stocks it needs to
happen. And the Norwegians, of course, on the other side of the North Sea, you know, they've got their 200-mile limit, they police it in a very tough way, and not only do they ban the throwing back of anything dead, they've got a lot of wealthy fishermen, I understand.
Indeed, their industry's thriving. So when you see that we share the same, northern North Sea for us, they're southern grounds that join onto the North Sea as well, and they're doing very well, and our industry's going out the door, it's because of legislative ineptitude. So we can't environmentally or economically afford to keep the common fisheries policy going. We can't afford to do it constitutionally either. So I really hope that the rumours that Mr Gove's fighting hard in Cabinet to make a change are true. But no, the discard ban's a key thing. Pulse fishing's another. The bass ban.
We're going to come on. We're going to come on to pulse fishing, which will make anybody listening to this show who cares about the environment absolutely boil with rage. And anyone that likes going fishing would be pretty angry by what could happen to bass stocks as well. You're listening to the Sunday edition of the Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC. It's 11:15.
LBC Through Your Workday with Sheila Fogarty from 1 after James O'Brien at 10.
You can stick this on a T-shirt if you want, or even, indeed, the side of a bus. Why can't we take the money that we're spending on Brexit and give it all to the NHS?
Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
Imagine this. It's time to change your car. Someone offers to buy it. Great. But only if you buy your new car from them. Ugh. Which means you don't have the freedom to shop around for a better deal. Well, that's what happens when you trade your car in. So why not try selling to WeBuyAnyCar.com? Then you'll be a cash buyer, all footloose and fancy-free, off to try and get a better deal on your next car. Imagine that. Enter your reg number now at WeBuyAnyCar.com. Terms and conditions apply. See WeBuyAnyCar.com/info.
Look, our lowest ever black tag prices on hundreds of products at Currys PC World. See them in store or look online. With up to 30% off Canon cameras, you'll soon get the picture. Save up to £60 on smart home technology, with great offers from Google, Nest, Amazon and more. Plus 10% off the marked price on built-in appliances from top brands like Neff, Bosch and Hotpoint. Look at that. At Currys PC World, we help you get it right. Deal subject to availability.
Getting business finance can be a hard nut to crack, but with Market Invoice, it's a piece of cake. Flexible business loans and invoice finance to keep your business thriving. And our customer service is the cherry on top. Let's make it happen. Market Invoice. Easy as pie. Find out more at marketinvoice.com.
How's the chemotherapy going to make me feel?
Is your mum going to get better?
Can I go on that cancer drug trial I read about?
When do I know if my cancer's gone for good?
If you or your loved ones have questions about cancer, Cancer Research UK can help you find the answers. With years of research behind us, we can give you the expert guidance and information you need. Just go online and search Cancer Research UK today.
If you haven't taxed your car, here's something to think about. At the DVLA, we have the records of over 37 million vehicles on our database. Currently, we are clamping or impounding over 10,000 untaxed vehicles every month. It's nothing personal. It's the law. So if you haven't taxed your car, we'll find it. Tax it or lose it. Go to gov.uk/DVLA/car tax.
A perfect journey has no interruptions. Take the quickest route with navigation and real-time traffic information in the Volvo V40R design. A perfect journey sounds different every time. Listen to your favorite music via internet radio. And a perfect journey needs a perfect finale. Park easily with rear park assist. With monthly rentals of £199, the Volvo V40 T2R design Nav Plus has everything you need to make your journey perfect.
For your personal contract hire, initial rental 2750, Volvo Car Financial Services. Offer ends December 31st. Subject to status. You will not own the car. 18s and over. Guarantee may be required. Mileage and return conditions apply. Visit volvocars.co.uk for more details.
Take a test drive today at your local Volvo showroom. Volvo, human made.
Leading Britain's conversation. LBC, The Nigel Farage Show.
So I spent the day in August out of Ramsgate Harbour on the Boy Joshua boat with Eddie the skipper, and you can go to lbc.co.uk. You can see the video and pictures of my trip, what we did, what happened to the fish, plus you can find out why we were stopped briefly by the UK Border Force. So let's rejoin Eddie on that boat as we've shot the nets. We're now about to start drawing them in. So we're hauling nets, Eddie. How's it looking?
A bit slow at the moment, but hopefully it's going to improve. We're getting one or two.
What's that?
That is a lovely rock. And here's a bigger one.
God, dear.
Oh, here's another skate.
Ah, here we go. Skate. This is what we're after.
Absolutely.
But you can't catch too many.
No, and as you watch, unfortunately, I'm going to say goodbye.
But that's a good eating fish. Why have you thrown that back?
Well, unfortunately, we got obviously. Oh, we got to. We have a quota for the month, and unfortunately, if we keep too many, we won't be able to go fishing later in the month for something else. So you've got to, use it wise, use your quota wisely.
Will those fish survive?
Some will, some won't. It's just the way the game is. It's absolutely terrible.
But it's a terrible waste, isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, it's not something that's obviously I'm happy about doing.
Pretty graphic.
How many is too many and all that?
So how many do you reckon you throw back a month?
Quite a few tons at times.
Quite a few tons?
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, the trouble is, you can be fishing for soles, and if the skate are on the ground and you don't know they're there before you shoot, then you end up catching loads of skate which you've got to throw away.
Now, don't these rules need changing pretty damn quickly?
Absolutely. They don't actually reflect what fish are on the ground.
Do you think
a lot of the quotas are they're designed for fishing that took place 30, 40 years ago, and everything's moved on since then.
Shall I invite Michael Gove to come on the boat? Would you have a few words to say to him?
Quite possibly, yes.
I think that was a diplomatic answer for the first time ever from a UK fisherman. They normally speak their mind. He was very well behaved there, wasn't he? But yeah, we're hauling the nets and they're catching skates, and as I said earlier, fish do change over years. We've got an absolute explosion of thornback ray skates around the eastern part of England, and yet the quotas that are set annually in Brussels simply don't reflect what's out there. And when you think that boat with Eddie and his son on it, which is a boat that is just about 30 feet, just under 10 metres, when he says alone that boat is throwing back a few tons a month of skates, probably half of which are going to die and just rot on the seabed. There's something going wrong. I'm with Aaron Brown, the head of the Fishing for Leave campaign, and Aaron, you and I work very hard together to try and make fisheries a big issue in the referendum, and indeed the Wednesday before the vote, you gave us a huge hand in bringing boats together from right across the United Kingdom to come up the Thames and to parade outside Westminster. Was that an important day for your industry?
I think massively so. I think without that and the help you did with the publicity for us, which was huge, that fishing would have probably been lost in the wilderness just now. However, I think the British people have always known there is something endemically wrong with fishing, that coastal communities have been devastated from our membership of Europe and sold out by Ted Heath in 1973. And I really think that it is now perceived as one of the acid tests. It epitomises the surrender of the country to Europe, and it's really going to epitomise whether we actually have a clean, successful Brexit.
It is, although there are some strong supporters of the common fisheries policy, and we met one that day, of course, didn't we, up the river, on his...
He wasn't very polite.
He wasn't very polite, was he? He was, of course, for those that don't remember, Sir Bob Geldof. And here's a little taste of what Sir Bob had to say to us.
Britain makes more money than any other country in Europe from fishing. 2, Britain has the second largest quota for fish in Europe after Denmark. 3, Britain has the third largest landings. 4th, you are no fisherman's friend. You were on the European Parliament Fishing Committee and you attended 1 out of 43 meetings. You're a fraud, Nigel. Go back down the river because you're up one without a canoe.
Well, there's Sir Bob, and in answer to his question, of course, when I was on the Fisheries Committee, it was non-legislative. It didn't affect anything. Didn't matter what we did or how we voted, because all of it was decided by the European Commission. I don't know what it was there for. It was a farce. Nowadays, in theory, it does have some power, although the British MEPs that sit on it find themselves outvoted every time. But there we are. Bob was defending the common fisheries policy, and I come to you, Aaron Brown, of Head of Fishing for Leave. You know, he said that we make more money in the British fishing industry than other fleets, and we have the second largest quota. What do you have to say to Sir Bob?
Well, the thing he misses there is we should have the largest, and we should have the largest landings. Britain should be one of the premier fishing nations in the world, and we've been reduced to near destitution. Just now, although we have 50% of the international fisheries zones that surround the British Isles that we share with the EU, with Norway, and with, well, just touching Faroe, although we have 50% of the waters, we only get 25% of the fish. And when you then account for the flagships that the likes of the NFFO and that represent, where they account for 75% of the domestic British fishing industry, the indigenous British fisherman's down to about 10% of his own resources. So we've had this monumental loss of our resources. As people will remember, we had big decommissioning schemes where 60% of the UK fleet was cut up. So for Bob, as part of the metropolitan elite...
Sir Bob, please.
Sir Bob, we'll be polite to him, to stand as part of the metropolitan elite and shout down, especially some of the small-scale guys who are really struggling to keep a roof above their heads and keep their families going, and for him to have the temerity to stand there, I don't think it was a very gratifying sight at all.
No, it wasn't. And I know one of the Southend boats actually boarded Bob's vessel, and a couple of the Southend fishermen. And I'm surprised they didn't push him over. I'm pleased they didn't, because as it was, I think it was a giant PR victory for fishing and for the Leave campaign, as you say. Bob quoting these figures, but forgetting about the fact that actually we've given away most of what should be ours. Let's go to Carolyn, who's calling from Hull, in East Yorkshire, and Hull, Grimsby. Of course, these were, Carolyn, just a few decades ago, ports with literally hundreds of fishing boats, weren't they?
Definitely so, Nigel. My dad fished, was a deep-sea fisherman for 45 years, and his father before that. And I've seen Hull, absolutely, it was buzzing with manufacturing, and all the docks in barrels of fish. There was very low unemployment in Hull. It was one of the main industries, and not only that, Nigel, it's not just the fishing what it has an impact on, it's also the cod liver oil industry, the pet industry, the cosmetic industry, all the processing factories. It's absolutely destroyed the fishing industry.
I know. And what is so sickening, Carolyn, is that you could and should have 200 miles of the North Sea that should be ours to manage. And if foreign boats want to fish there, that's fine. They buy a licence from us to do so. And when you look across, Carolyn, to the other side of the North Sea from you, to Norway, you see an industry that not only has put in place the right environmental policies, but has a thriving fishing industry. There must be a sense I'm guessing, Carolyn, in Hull and elsewhere, there must be a sense of betrayal, effectively.
Oh, absolutely. When my dad was one of the top earners in Hull. It was never without a ship. He went on the South African Ape exhibition. He even looked after Prince Charles on board a ship.
Wow.
And it all, I could tell you loads, absolutely loads, Nigel, about all this fishing.
Is it time, Carolyn? Is it time? Should we get out of the CFP as quickly as possible?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Not only that, now we need to change the size of our fishing nets.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing is, the fishing nets now, as the EU imposed upon us, they're throwing fish away.
I know.
Well, if you had larger fishing nets, the smaller fish could escape.
Do you know what, Carolyn? They're getting none of it right. I've got to move on. I thank you for your call, for your passion, your family history in this industry, and the sense of betrayal that places like Hull and Grimsby feel. Kevin is calling me from Blackburn. Kevin, good morning.
Hi, Nigel. Thank you very much for what you've fought for the British people to leave the European Union. Obviously, was a big UKIP supporter, and it's just ridiculous that we're catching all these fish, and even the fishermen are saying that we're having to throw them back, and they're going to die anyway.
Yes, I mean, you'd have thought that perhaps an old people's home might have taken those skate wings, or a school, or we could sell them for charity, or... Yeah, I mean, you would have thought there was something could be done, rather than chucking stuff back that may not make it, Kevin, I know. But what is it with our government? Haven't they got the will just to say, we're going to take back what's rightfully ours?
Nigel, I've been looking at this, and from the early 60s, the politicians knew... in the 70s what the European Union would become. And if people would just Google FCO 30/1048, we're not actually in the European Union legally. We're taken in the European Union illegally.
Well, yeah, but that's history. We can't change that, Kevin. That's history. We can't change it. But your sense of frustration, though, I think is the same with everybody. We just want to get on with this, don't we?
Nigel, yes. I'm with a group called the White Pen Dragons, and we're going under the Magna Carta and the Bill of Rights. The Queen had an oath to the people, and all the
Kevin, I wish you luck with it, mate, but I promise you, as soon as you try and get legalistic with this, you're relying on court cases and raising huge sums of money. I wish you well, but it won't work. Dear me, this is the most biased lot I've ever heard about fisheries. As an MEP for over 20 years, what have you been doing, says Nick in Sevenoaks. What can we do, Nick, when for most of that 20 years we've had no legislative power whatsoever? This has been decided purely by the European Commission, which nobody votes for and nobody can remove. And yes, they have come for the British fishing industry and devastated it, and they may be, within a couple of weeks, about to deal a devastating blow to sea angling and coastal communities in this country, because they're coming after the anglers now too. You're listening to the Sunday edition of the Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC. It's 11:30, and time for the news with Simon Conway.
2 men and 3 children have been killed in Leeds after a stolen car crashed into a tree. 2 15-year-old boys are being held by police after it happened in the Meanwood area of the city last night. Ireland's European Commissioner says the country will play tough to avoid a hard border with Northern Ireland after Brexit. Phil Hogan says the UK should stay in the customs union to avoid the need for formal border checks. A review has been ordered by the Home Secretary into whether protests and demonstrations should be banned outside abortion clinics. Amber Rudd says it's completely unacceptable that women should feel harassed or intimidated. LBC weather, cold and bright this morning, turning cloudier later. Some showers for the north and west, a high of 7 degrees.
LBC Travel in Surrey, they're accused on the M25 clockwise after an accident earlier on between junction 10 for the A3 at the Wisley interchange and junction 11 for Chertsey. All the lanes have reopened. In West Sussex, it's slow on the M23 southbound towards junction 9 for Gatwick Airport after a car broke down earlier on. All lanes are now open. In Hertfordshire, on the M1 southbound, a lane is closed at junction 6 for Bricket Wood for recovery work after an accident that happened yesterday. In Chelsea, Sloane Avenue is closed both ways because of an accident between Fulham Road and Kings Road. And on the rails, engineering works are affecting lots of London overground routes today, so includes a replacement bus running between Camden Road and Stratford and between Highbury and Islington and Dalston Junction. LBC Travel, I'm Dave Goff.
This is LBC. You've worked hard your whole life, building up your business and your personal wealth.
only for the taxman to take a big chunk after you're gone. Protect your family and loved ones by talking to one of the estate planning specialists at Barnes Rofe. We'll look at your situation and help you to plan ahead and manage your estate for inheritance tax. Don't delay. Visit barnesrofe.com. Barnes Rofe. Clever accountants for business.
Antibiotics, we're wonderful pills, but don't ever think we'll cure all of your ills. So every time you feel a bit under the weather, don't always think that we can make you better. Take us for the wrong thing, that's dangerous to do. When you really need us, we can stop working for you. So please don't end up paying the price. Always take your doctor's advice.
Taking antibiotics when you don't need them puts you and your family at risk. Take your doctor or nurse's advice and keep antibiotics working.
Vodafone's Black Friday is live, which means you can now get unlimited fibre broadband for just £20 a month for 18 months plus £9.95 for delivery. Cue the victory dance. Get it online or in-store before the 27th of November and dance your socks off. Don't worry, you'll get another pair for Christmas. The future is exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
18-month agreement subject to credit check, acceptance and availability. Full terms and verification at vodafone.co.uk/broadband.
The big red building on Golders Green Road.
At Gold's Menswear, big men can choose from a huge range of top designer suits, jackets, blazers and trousers. They can fit anyone, extra tall, short, portly and king size up to 70-inch chest, all with savings of up to 75% off RRP. Gold's also offer an alteration service while you wait, plus Loken Barker shoes too. Open Sunday to Wednesday till 6, Thursdays till late, half day Friday.
The big red building on Golders Green Road.
Here's a smart Black Friday offer. Save a huge £60 on Hive Active Heating, now only £186.75. With Hive, you can control your heating from your phone, so you can always come back to a warm home and never have to heat an empty one. What's more, installation by a trusted British Gas engineer is included. Join over 500,000 people already using Hive Active Heating. But be quick, offer ends on the 1st of December. Search Hive for all our great Black Friday offers. Hive services require broadband, terms apply.
2 helpings of turkey, roast potatoes, Christmas pudding, mince pies, wine and chocolate. If the indulgence of Christmas gives you heartburn and indigestion, get dual relief with Gaviscon Double Action. It gets to work instantly and lasts up to twice as long as antacids. Gaviscon Double Action. Always read the label.
Whether your business is small or large, your ambitions for it are always big. And so are ours. That's why, no matter what size your business, we have local business relationship managers who'll help you along the way. So with us in your corner, the sky's the limit. To see why we've been awarded Business Bank of the Year 3 years running, visit santanderbusiness.co.uk. Here to help your business prosper. Santander.
Business Money Facts Award 2015 to 2017.
The Nigel Farage Show on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
Nick in Sevenoaks accused me of being biased because I'm saying the common fisheries policy has been a disaster for our industry. Well, Nick, I have asked Mr Gove and Mr Eustace, the relevant ministers, to come on this show and to defend why we should stay in the CFP or in the CFP rules during the transition period, and they've, I'm afraid, been a no-show. And we have, I've just played out the arguments in favour of the CFP as articulated by the wonderful Sir Bob Geldof. So back on to the boy Joshua with Eddie from Ramsgate. I talked about Sir Bob Geldof and the flotilla, and I wonder what Eddie's response was. Well, last year, in the run-up to the referendum, I worked with Fishing for Leave, and we organised our little flotilla up the Thames, which was a big visual spectacle, and I thought I was doing my best to encourage it all, and we were met by a guy called Sir Bob Geldof. And I just wondered what your view of Sir Bob, because Sir Bob was saying that you in the fishing community have really got a great deal out of the EU.
Well, that is the biggest load of, what can we say, Geldofs. No, that is the biggest lie ever. We've been shafted, basically, over the years. We've been decimated, we've had our livelihoods taken away with quotas and bad science. And been really negative. And Geldof, to be honest, was badly informed and advised in what he was trying to put across.
Yeah, but it certainly came across as the rich telling the poor what... I mean, the thought of Bob Geldof having a row with Southend fishermen, in fact, in many ways, played into the Leave side's arguments. But people will tell me, this boat's 35 years old. If you wanted to get this boat updated, you would get EU funds to do it, wouldn't you?
I could get EU funds if I could get EU funds, but to be honest, the criteria of getting the money, the way you deal with it, is all too complicated. At the end of it, I've then got to earn my share of the grant money. Well, I have to earn a share of money to go with the grant. Well, I'm not earning enough money, as it stands, to put to the grant to do my boat up to catch no fish. At the end of the day, if you're not allowed to catch any fish, what's the point in spending more money on your boat?
Right, so the people that would like to give you the money are the people who are stopping you catching fish.
Absolutely.
Right. And the one other argument that we get about fishing is that a hell of a lot of fish caught along this coast goes to the Boulogne fish market, the massive fish market in Boulogne. And they say, well, if we left the EU, they wouldn't buy our fish. How do you respond to that?
Well, I think, to be honest, if we increase the fishing limits further out, so maybe they couldn't quite get as much of our waters, then perhaps they might need our fish a little bit more, perhaps, than what they do at the moment.
Well, certainly demand for fish in Spain and France and elsewhere is a lot higher than it is here. So you're not concerned they'll still buy our fish, because otherwise where are they going to get it from?
Well, I hope that's the case, yeah. Fingers crossed.
Yeah. Well, and maybe, who knows, maybe the Brits might start eating a bit more fish.
Well, that is a big thing. There's a lot of fish species that are underutilised. I mean, it'd be nice if a few more chefs actually got behind the local fish that we catch and started bigging us up a bit.
Yeah, I mean, we got herrings in abundance, sprats by the billion, and no one's eating any of it, are they?
No, and I mean, it's all fish that they would eat, or used to eat traditionally, and they don't eat anymore. And that's a bit silly, really, and it's a shame, because the sea is plentiful with all that sort of fish.
Well, let's hope that with a bit of education... I remember Rick Stein cooking gurnard on television, and nobody in the country had ever heard of gurnard. No restaurant sold gurnard, and now gurnard is a highly prized thing. So I think with a bit of education, things could change.
I think you're right. I think at the end of the day, it'll be good.
Well, that was me out with Eddie on Boy Joshua at a Ramsgate, and you can see all the videos and shots of the nets going out, the nets coming back, what happened to the skate, the lobsters, the crabs, etc. Go to lbc.co.uk and get a feeling for how these guys earn their living, albeit the day I was out with them, the weather was rather nice. I'm not so sure I'd have enjoyed it quite so much out there in February, with sleet and a northeasterly wind. Now, angling. Since Magna Carta, one of our freeborn rights has been that the land between the high tide mark and the low tide mark has been common land. And we can go out there and we can fish and we can pretty much do whatever we want. Sea angling used to claim up to 1 million people a year that engaged in it. A lot of that was people in holiday in Cornwall or West Wales going out for sort of an hour's mackerel fishing or whatever. But what is for certain, though it has declined, there are at least 250,000, probably more people, who like going to fish for bass. That lovely silvery sea bass. But, over the last few years, the European Commission have been limiting what anglers can do, and I understand they now face quite a big threat. And joining me on the phone is Barney Wright, the former editor of Total Sea Fishing magazine. Barney, good morning.
Good morning, Nigel.
So, I understand there's a big meeting going to take place in Brussels in a couple of weeks' time where bass angling is on the agenda. What is the proposal?
Well, the proposal, my gathering, is that bass fishing was pretty much banned for RSA, if you want to look at it that way, because... RSA being recreational sea angling, yeah. Yes, recreational sea angling, yes, because at the moment we're limited to no take in the first 6 months of the year, then we're allowed one bass per session in the second part of the year. Next year they're proposing that basically we can't have any at all. In fact, it looks a bit like a moratorium for the recreational sea anglers, whereas the commercial fleet apparently will be able to continue to keep fish. I don't think that's strictly fair. I don't blame anybody for it. All I blame, not the commercial sector, it's not their fault. I blame the EU and the ridiculous CFP.
It is an amazing situation that for the last couple of years. So right now, if I was to leave this studio and head off to go bass fishing, and I might have a good day, I might have a bad day. In fact, I've generally learnt with fishing, more days disappoint with a rod and line than excite, but I'm only allowed to take one fish home, and if it's the first 6 months of the year, I can't take any. And what Barney Wright is saying is that next year, it could be that we're not allowed to keep a single fish. So Barney, clearly the European Commission must think that anglers are catching a lot of bass.
Well, you and I both know very well, as you said a minute ago, the reality is you go to the beach, you're allowed to keep one bass per day, and, when you speak to most anglers, they say, I had one last week, and it's one every week they might catch if they're regular fishermen. It's not as easy. As they say that you have stories that there are bass everywhere. Yes, there are in certain places in the sea, but clearly stock control needs to be, but not what's being proposed. But I believe that since RSA would often have to be drawn into the common fisheries policy, they're seriously paying the price.
They're paying a very big price. And, of course, there's also the boat fishing element of this. You look at ports like Littlehampton, you look at ports, going down the West Country. Some of them have got sort of 20 boats with skippers, with crews. Anglers travel from all over the country. They spend a lot of money in the local guest houses, the hotels, the pubs afterwards in some cases, the tackle shops, the bait collectors. What I can see, Barney, is that for someone to go onto a boat out for a day's fishing in the Channel or North Sea or wherever it is, frankly, with the petrol to and forth and the bits and bobs, there's not much change out of £100 for a day out. But that £100 per person, perhaps there are 5 or 6 people on that boat, that is, some would argue, Barney Wright, that's putting as much money into local seaside communities as commercial fishing is.
Well, mathematically, it's very plausible. In fact, very possible, because the money is always coming in and not going out. The recreational seeing anglers have never claimed a penny for losses of capture or anything. So, but it's a very ridiculous situation that recreational sea anglers find themselves in. You know the score as well as I do. You fish as much as me, and what can I say? It just makes my blood boil.
No, it does. And I understand that the Angling Trust, which has been formed to sort of support anglers' rights, they are lobbying and petitioning, I think, to try and get some common sense into these negotiations in December, yeah?
Yes, it seems to me they're battling on the right side this time, yes.
Good. Barney Wright, former editor of Total Sea Fishing magazine, thank you. So that's it, folks. You can't even go out and take a couple of bass home for tea. You're breaking European Union law. I thought we voted to leave. I thought this nonsense was behind us. One of the reasons George Eustace, I'm sure is not on the programme this morning, is in Aberdeen. I had a head-to-head with him on this in private. We were both backing the Leave campaign. I wasn't going to have a public row. And I said, George, if people on a good day, and maybe 1 in 3 days is a good day, are only allowed for the last 6 months of the year to take one fish home, do you think they'll really go on fishing? He said, well, that sounds like a pretty good deal for me. I won't tell you what I said in return. You're listening to the Sunday edition of the Nigel Farge Show, exclusively on LBC. It's 11:45.
Coming up at 12 on LBC, Owen Jones.
Russia's been blamed for driving Brexit and Donald Trump. I'm no Putin fan. But are we just letting our own elites off the hook here?
Owen Jones on LBC.
I know how to avoid a soggy bottom. I know the name of cinema's most famous white shark. I know all the things you can do with a Maris Piper. And I definitely know the TV show that made this music famous. But I don't know my state pension.
Find out more about your state pension and how much it should be. Get to know your pension. Visit yourpension.gov.uk.
Life, eh? 1 minute you're up, the next, well, don't even ask. If life's happened to you and it's affected your credit history, at Wheels for Sure, we don't think it should affect your credit in the here and now.
So, we could lease you a brand new car for 3 years. We accept 95% of applicants. Once we're happy you can afford the initial rental and monthly payments. And if your company pays a car allowance, we'll automatically accept you.
If you've got a checkered credit history, there is an alternative that'll get you on the road and keep you there. Change your life today at wheelsforsure.com. Because when life happens, we're here for sure.
Wheels for Sure is FCA regulated. T's and C's apply.
At Homebase, we're all about great Christmas value, like 7-foot artificial trees from just £15, and you can have it delivered to your door for only £5. Homebase, always low prices. Terms and conditions apply.
Your company's doing pretty well.
Your tax position's okay. So, what's keeping you awake at night?
To face the future with confidence, talk to Vision Consulting. We've expanded from Gants Hill to the Gherkin, with clients from the fishmonger to the multi-million-pound property investment company. And our growth as a firm of chartered accountants and registered auditors is based on our passion for our clients' business.
Have confidence in your accountant. See visionconsulting.co.uk.
It's easy to conform.
Please move down inside the carriage.
But it's more fun to stand out from the crowd. From the 24th to the 26th of November, the Jaguar Black event has exclusive offers, including the Jaguar XF, with up to £6,400 deposit contribution and 4.9% APR representative PCP finance. Find out more at your local retailer. Jaguar, the art of performance.
Selected models only. Credit subject to status. UK 18 plus only. Deposit contribution amount varies and is dependent upon XF model purchased. Terms and conditions apply. At participating retailers only. Black Horse Limited trading as Jaguar Financial Services.
Know-it-alls. Nothing worse. But I'm not going to pretend I know everything. I just want you to have a think about what you drink at home through the week. The couple with a takeaway. The few in front of the telly. You might as well have another. Well, cutting out just a few of those drinks could improve your health. Even lower your blood pressure. Would you really miss them? Ultimately, it's your shout. Have a little less, feel a lot better. See how at drinkaware.co.uk.
At this time of year, give your body nutritional support with Immunace multivitamins, with vitamin D, zinc and selenium, which contribute to the normal function of the immune system. Immunace from Vitabiotics, the UK's #1 vitamin company. Available from Boots, pharmacies and vitabiotics.com.
To be honest, when I heard about this, I thought, you're having a laugh, aren't you? It's called the Smart Meter Power of 10p Challenge, where basically I had to feed as many bodybuilders as possible using just 10p of energy. No pressure then, guys.
Come on, Ainsley.
But after a manic cooking frenzy...
Stop, your 10p's up!
I still managed to prepare an incredible 14 meals. Get in there, my son.
See how far 10p could go in your home. Contact your energy supplier about getting your smart meter at no extra cost.
The Nigel Farage Show on LBC.
Well, back on Eddie's boat, back on Boy Joshua, out of Ramsgate, we talk not just about the fact that the quota he's been given means he effectively can't earn a living. Also, another problem out there is the seas are littered with rubbish. Eddie, explain this.
Big debate raging at the moment. Pictures on television of whales washed up dead, and they cut the intestines open, and there's miles and miles of plastic in them.
Yep.
I mean, how much rubbish, how much litter do you see?
Not as much as we used to. The days of the P&O ferries, the Townsend Torreson ferries and the plastic cups in the 1980s, we don't see anywhere near as much plastic on the seabed in our nets that we used to do. I mean, obviously, you do see plastic bottles, more of a shore-based thing, but actually in the sea where we're not finding any more plastic doing what we're doing than there has been in the past. In fact, a lot less.
That's interesting. I mean, maybe other parts of the world vary. And tell us, you know, over the years, putting up your nets, and today we've seen skates and lobsters and crabs, but what are the unusual things you've seen over the years coming up in your nets?
Motorbikes, push bikes, shopping trolleys, washing machines, and a few years ago some guys on a trawler had a 2CV car.
And what about war relics? Because we're kind of in bomb alley from World War II here, aren't we?
Oh yes, I mean it's not unusual to get shells. Personally, we've had a £500 mine. Other people get £1,000 parachute bombs. Over the years, quite a lot of stuff.
So you've got to be a little bit careful when you're hauling those nets then?
Yes.
And tell me, I mean, you know, obviously we're in the narrowest part of the channel here just about, but under international law, up to 12 miles post-Brexit should be just our fishing waters. Do you think that's realistic or not?
I'd like to think it's a possibility. Personally, I don't think we'll ever get it, but I'm hoping we will.
Well, I do, yes, I must admit, for the sake of this industry, I do. And finally, and we've had a great morning out and learnt a lot, have you got a message for Michael Gove?
Do your best for us, but make sure you do, otherwise we won't forget the ballot box.
Well, I think Michael Gove, actually, who comes from Aberdeen, who comes from a family where his father was a fish merchant, I'm sure Michael Gove wants to do his best, and George Eustace represents a Cornish constituency, and hey, fishing's pretty big in that county. I'm sure they want to do their best. The trouble is, it looks like we're going to be trapped into a transition, and if we're trapped into that transition, under the current rules we've got, we will have tens of thousands of anglers not bothering to go angling, which will put people out of work in coastal communities, and we will see more of our commercial fishing boats closed. I think it's urgent that we leave the CFP as quickly as we possibly can. But I want to bring in just one more environmental aspect to this, because it does matter. Fish stocks matter, rubbish in our seas matter, all of this stuff matters. You know, what we want to have is an industry that is managed properly and sensibly. Pulse fishing, and it was mentioned the other week. A lady phoned in from Lowestoft the other week and mentioned pulse fishing. I'm with Aaron Brown, head of fishing, I believe. Just tell us what pulse fishing is, please.
Pulse fishing is a Dutch invention. They're big fishing vessels that were fishing hard in the southern North Sea, became inefficient, towing big heavy chain mats, 10 tons of chain along the seabed. And what they came up with was they would use electrical wires to tickle the fish out the bottom. And what our members, certainly in the east coast of England, are seeing is in total environmental devastation of the southern North Sea. Because, of course, it's not just electrocuting fish, it's electrocuting all the other marine life around it. And that's killing the feeding, it's killing the fish. People are retrieving fish with their insides burst out, their backs broken. It is a horrific way of catching fish, done to try and keep an inefficient Dutch industry going. There's obviously big fishing companies across there. The Dutch have a lot of flagships in Britain as well, boats that are registered here that have lobbied our government. And it's really a type of fishing. It's barbaric, it's got to stop.
There are no British-owned
No.
boats conducting pulse fishing, but it's allowed to happen inside our waters because the European Commission have this as an acceptable method.
Well, the worst thing about it is it's not even an acceptable method. It was meant to be for a trial for a limited period of time for a limited number of boats, 5% of the Dutch fleet. It's now at 28% of the fleet, 100 boats, and it's been going on for 10 years. The British government has ignored it, partly because it's not on its doorstep, partly because it can't do anything about it, and big lobby groups and some environmental NGOs are culpable in this as well, have allowed pulse fishing to go on, and it has absolutely smashed the southern North Sea.
Where is Greenpeace on this? I mean, Greenpeace should be screaming blue murder.
Well, they should be.
About this. And yes, you're right. As I say, the phone call from Lowestoft we had, absolutely backing up what you're saying. I hope that once we do take back control of our territorial waters, that we ban things like pulse fishing. Would the British fishing industry support that?
Oh, absolutely. And I'd say we are far more environmentally sustainable in what the Dutch were doing. You can't replace one bad job with another. And really, the damage it's doing is incredible. Nobody in the British public would accept if we're going into fields and tasering sheep. So I don't see why we should be tasering fish either.
I'd love to see some more video of this, I really would. I mean, on lbc.co.uk you can see all the pictures and videos from my trip today. I may have to do another one to get to the bottom of pulse fishing. Let's go to David, who's from Cornwall, who I understand is a fisherman. David, good morning.
Yeah, morning, Nigel.
Morning. So what do you do, David?
Well, I'm a fisherman. I work out in Newlyn. I work a trawler out in Newlyn.
Yep.
And just like to first say, just thanks for all the support you've given us, Nigel. It's very much appreciated right across the fishing industry.
Well, I'm trying my damnedest, David, but I'm getting a bit worried. I have to say, I had a wander around Newlyn in August of this year, and have to say, it's looking a bit sad, isn't it?
It is, yeah. It's in need of investment. I mean, that's ongoing, and I think the important thing to remember in all this is how forward-thinking and innovative the British fishing industry is. We generally lead the way in Europe on scientific issues and issues like you've just brought up on your programme about the litter. We have a scheme where all the fishermen bring their litter in, and it's all put in bags and it's taken ashore. So we're very supportive of the marine environment, and we're very proactive in the marine environment. And, we have a huge problem down in the southwest with these crazy CFP rules that are causing a huge amount of discards. And, under British coastal state status, which I'm sure we'll get, we can move into a better era of eliminating these discards. And a lot of them are created by what we call relative shares. I'm sure you've mentioned that before, but just to give you an example, an area for haddock, which is their single biggest, it's their only discard, it's their single biggest discard.
Yeah.
The UK has 10% of the share, and France has 60% of the share.
That's a good deal, isn't it?
We're starting off with a broken leg to start with.
So David, let's just do that again, shall we? Because the people driving their cars might not have picked that up. Just explain again how you, as a fisherman from Cornwall, how the haddock that are caught are divided up. Just explain it again.
Well, for instance, you have an EU share, so a giant pie, where the data of all that data goes into collecting that stock for that species. So 60% of that stock is shared out to the French, 10% to the UK, and 20% to Ireland. But the majority of that fish sits within 20 miles of the Cornish coast.
Wow.
So it pretty much all resides in Cornish waters. So when we go for coastal status and we invoke a zonal attachment, I would certainly hope that the scientists will know that fish is in that area and that the UK will get a bigger slice of that pie. And then we can eliminate the discards, because the discard problem we've had for many, many years in the UK is really solely down to the fact that we do not have the right shares to be able
And David, are you concerned, because it seems to me Michael Gove and George Eustace are slightly running away from us this morning, I mean, are you concerned that if we stay within the CFP rules for a transition period that could last for years, that there may not be much of your industry left?
Well, we don't want that. I mean, the fishing industry wants to take back the 12 miles, certainly, and go to zonal coastal state, which is out to the 200 meridian line at 2019 when we leave. And I do think that's going to happen, but I think it's very important people like yourselves holding the government to account on that.
Well, we're trying.
Sure that happens.
David, we're trying. I thank you for your call. And I did mention earlier that the Border Force, when we were out, approached the boat, and I think it's because the LBC producer was sort of sitting up on the bow, wearing a sort of bit like a parka. I think he sort of thought that there was something dodgy going on, but they were certainly a bit surprised to see me. They really, really were. Well, look, thanks for all your calls and texts and tweets on that. And this isn't just about an industry, important though that is. It isn't just about people going angling, important though for them that is. Actually, this is about the environment too, and we must have a much more environmentally sustainable fishing method than we've got. Discards are bad enough. Pulse fishing, frankly, sounds pretty repulsive. I thank Aaron Brown, I think everyone that's been in today. You've been listening to the Nigel Farage Show on LBC. I'm back tomorrow from 7. At 3 o'clock this afternoon, it's Alex Salmond, but up next, it's Owen Jones.
Thanks. Coming up, is it time to give ex-convicts another chance? Lots of people have messed up, behaved badly, done terrible things even they regret forever, not least when they were young. But a new report suggests that employees are trawling through convictions over a decade old. How will we ever rehabilitate offenders if we don't learn to forgive? The Premier League is amongst British organisations signing up to tackle homophobia. 2/3 of fans think more needs to be done to make LGBT people feel accepted. But I want to ask this. Won't taking on homophobia be good for straight men too? But first, did Russia really make Brexit and Trump happen? Look, I'm no Putin fanboy, but isn't it easy to blame Russia for the failings of our own rotten elites? That's me, Owen Jones, on LBC, coming up.
On FM, online, on your mobile, and on digital radio. Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 12 o'clock, West Yorkshire police say 5 people, including 3 children, have died after a stolen car hit a tree. The crash happened in the Meanwood area of Leeds last night. LBC's Martin Lindsay has more details from our newsroom in Yorkshire.
The scene of the crash site remains at the centre of a 150-metre cordon, while the tree has a huge mark where the car struck. Police were called to Stonegate Road just before 10 p.m. last night and said they were met with complete carnage. We now know 3 boys are among the 5 people killed. The youngest was just 12